Good morning, Burwood. Good morning. I'm so glad for those of you who are here with us. I'm so excited that you decided to continue with us in our series, Finding Faith in an Anxious Age. Thank you. Finding Faith in an Anxious Age. I think we've been talking about this idea of anxiety and tension and the rise of mental health issues in our age due to the disconnectedness of society while we are so digitally connected. We've been talking about the effect of living, in a sense, in a virtual world. Our lives, our real lives, the lives that we portray in the digital world that we actually don't feel in the real world. We have friends in the digital world that we never talk to in the real world. We have followers in the digital world that we wouldn't even connect with in the real world. And because of that, while it looks like we have so many associations and we're not alone, the reality is we often feel alone. And due to the fact that we feel alone, we go through issues alone. On Valentine's Day, we post the pictures of our marriages, 25 years, 10 years, 15 years. But in the house, we haven't talked for the last 15 minutes. We post pictures of grandeur and greatness and how everything is good with our mates and everything's good at our jobs and everything's wonderful. I love my job. I got a chance to do this. But the reality is we dread going to work. Everything looks wonderful. We post the highlights of life, but the behind the scenes we're crumbling. Is that true? And one of the greatest issues that we have is that our online persona has become a brand. Meaning that we have to keep it up. We have to continuously feed it. It has to look like we've always wanted it to be. We have to create a brand that says, this is who we are. We are vegan. I drink smoothies. I run at the park. This is who I am. I help people. I consult. I'm a change agent. I have superpowers. I am liked all the time. And we have to keep up that persona. And the reality is, in our effort to try to keep it up, we're struggling with, what am I really here for? Whether you're 53, 35, or 13, the question, what am I here for, is something you're already asking. Thank you. And the difficulty that we have is that we're struggling with, what is my purpose in this world? What do I live for? Do I really matter? Does what I do matter? Studies showed the other day, I was reading, that millennials are the first ones to leave a job if it's not fulfilling. And their bosses get angry at them for not sticking it out like they've done. They stayed committed, even though they hated the job, because it's not about whether you hate the job. It's about protecting your family and doing the right thing and being a person of integrity. And millennials go, forget that. If I don't like it, I'm gone. Because this generation says, and then the generation that's coming after it, Generation Z is even quicker. Generation Z says, I don't even need your job. I'm going to be an influencer. I'm going to make more money online just building a brand, and you can keep your job. But the whole thing, this entire struggle is really about, what is my purpose? What role do I play? This generation, the generation comes after it, says, I will do more to make sure I feel fulfilled than make money. Money is not as important as fulfillment. And then those generations that came before us are now in their 40s, they're now in their 50s, and they've worked hard, they've stayed committed, and they've built the business, they've made the money, they've traveled the world, and then they're going, wait a minute, I'm still not happy. I still don't find value. And therefore, it brings tension and it brings anxiety. Our series is trying to explore those that came before us, young people who came before and who dealt with similar situations, and what was their response to living in such an age? So what is their response to living in exile? When we started this series, we started with Peter, who tells us in 1 Peter that we are exiles, God's elect in the world, God's chosen, scattered throughout the nations, that we are exiles in this world. And so we're studying the life of exiles to see what is their response when you're in exile. How do I fight the tension of anxiety, the search for purpose? How do I find relevance when it seems that I'm no longer relevant? How do I find fulfillment in an age where everyone is doing better than me, so it seems? Their marriages are better, their kids are better behaved, their houses look better, their travels look better. My vacation is me at Macca's, their vacation is in Bali. How do I deal with that? And so today we turn to Jeremiah, my favorite prophet. The life of Jeremiah is very important to me because it was through Jeremiah that God spoke to me at a time where I was deciding, what do I do with my life? At the age of 17, I had already graduated, enrolled into school. I enrolled into my course to study theology. I was on my way, and my dad called me in, and he said to me, you are too young to go into ministry. He said to me, I know that, you've gone through, I told you before, I had gone through a series of difficulties in my life around that age. And I said, I know you've gone through some turbulent moments, and it's okay if you feel like, you're getting close to God, but you don't have to do ministry. I too had once felt the call to go to ministry. I'm okay. And he said, you're too young. Why don't you go study something else, do something great, achieve something wonderful, and once you've achieved everything, you can then enter ministry. Ministry is for old people. But I had been convinced and convicted. I had felt the conviction of God. Several different things in my life had added up to, I have been called to do this. And so at the age of 17, I remember going back to God after my father had just basically said to me, go to college, but we're not paying for college for you to go do that. And I remember going back to my room, and I was looking for something, said, look for a piece of paper. This person had handed me in my public school. I remember my last year of school, someone just handed me this piece of paper, inviting me to some Bible study. I had thrown it away somewhere, but I went into my room and it said, look for that piece of paper. Now, I'm a very organized person. Some of you know what that means. Everything's everywhere, but you know where to find it. Right? Everything was all over the place, but I knew it was in that portion of the chaos, that was where the paper was. And so I went to look for this piece of paper. I threw my room upside down, turned chaos into more chaos, and I couldn't find the paper. And then I said to God, God, you're going to talk to me the way, we've been dealing with this. We've had a little relationship where I open my Bible and whatever verse I read, that's what you're saying. Anybody ever? Okay, I'm not alone, so I'm not the only one. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to go and do this. I'm going to flip up. My father has just told me that I'm too young, and so I don't know what to do. So I flip through. I'm flipping through, and something says, do not flip through. Look for the paper. You know when you have that thing in your heart that says, this is what you need to do. And I'm going, I can't find it. And so right in my frustration, in the midst of my frustration, I go and I look all over the place and I throw this and I'm like, no, just talk to me this way. Here's the thing. God doesn't usually do the same thing twice. And you can't make God cooperate with you. This is why this 21 days of fasting and prayer, it's not about changing God's mind, it's about changing your heart. It's you that is meant to draw closer to the way God does things. It's not God that's meant to draw closer to the way you'd like things to be. And so I said, this is the way I want to do it. I'm about to open the Bible, and so it says, look for the paper. And I said, fine. I get up, and right on the floor is a piece of paper. And I look at this paper, ripped on top, ripped on the bottom, and all it said on the piece of paper was, do not say that you are too young. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And I've called you to be a prophet unto the nations. And that was that. I didn't know where it came from, didn't know what the verse was. I didn't even know it was a verse in the Bible. I just said, wow, well, Dad, here's what God said. He said, you can't say that I'm too young. Later on, I realized that this was the book of Jeremiah, and that God had basically said to Jeremiah at the age of 17, that I have called you into ministry. Jeremiah was already in the school of the priest, but he is now being called into the school of the prophets. And God was calling him to be a speaker of the nations. And at that point in my life, at the age of 17, my mom and I were just talking about that last night as I received a call back to the U.S. this week. And my mom and I were just talking about it. And my mom said, you know, here's the thing. She calls you Michael. He says, that's my middle name. She says, here's the thing, Michael. I have always known that your ministry would not be in the United States of America. And I remember when I looked at the book of Jeremiah and when I decided to come to Australia, one of the things my friends called me and said, go back and read your calling. And he didn't know it was from Jeremiah. He just said, go back and read your calling. And when I went back to the book of Jeremiah, he said, I've called you to be a prophet unto the nations. I will send you to the nations. And so part of my calling, part of what I know that I've been called to do is to go to different nations, is to go to be a part of different cultures. And here, my thoughts towards you today is, as you listen to the book of Jeremiah, is I need you to understand that God's job is to gather you on mission wherever you are called to go. Wherever you are. And so here's the thing. As I look at Jeremiah, you have to understand that the book of Jeremiah comes in the context that God knew you before you were born. Everything Jeremiah is saying is on that canvas. Everything God is saying to you is that I knew you before you were born. God is taking credit for your birth. That's incredible. God is taking credit for your birth. Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. I called you. I've appointed you. And so when we read today in the text that we're looking at, Jeremiah chapter 29 is where we're headed. In this chapter, we find a favorite verse that we all have used and misused and abused. But we want to look at it in its proper context today. Jeremiah 29, verse 1, under the heading and in the background of I knew you, I've called you, I made you, you are mine, and what happens in your life is because of me. Jeremiah 29, verse 1. This is the text of the letter that the prophet Jeremiah sent from Jerusalem to the surviving elders among the exiles and to the priests, the prophets, and all the other people Nebuchadnezzar had carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. This was after King Jehoiakim and the queen mother, the court officials and the leaders of Judah and Jerusalem, the skilled workers and artisans had gone into exile from Jerusalem. He entrusted this letter to Eliash, son of Shaphan, and Jeremiah, son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah, king of Judah, sent to King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. It said, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem. Verse 1 says Nebuchadnezzar brought them into exile. Verse 4 says, God, I carried them into exile. God is taking credit again for something that's happening in the natural world. In other words, Jeremiah is repeating the idea that nothing in your life happens without God's consent. And that's tough to hear because here in this chapter, God is not taking credit for something good in your life. Hello? He's taking credit for something that looks bad. Woo. See, this is the problem with the Old Testament. The God of the Old Testament is so sovereign that the good and the bad comes from him. The problem with the Old Testament is that God is saying no other power is greater in your life. If a door closes, I'm there. If a door opens, I'm there. David says, it doesn't matter if I go to the depths of hell, you are there. Even the night is light to you, oh God. Yeah, I'm sorry that I get a little bit excited. I know you guys go, ooh, here goes the American side again. Yeah. The whole issue here is that God is saying, in your mind, Nebuchadnezzar did this, but I don't want you to give credit where credit is not due. I did this. My boss fired me. Yeah, I was in the meeting. That's what God is saying. I was in the meeting. Oh, man, they made me redundant. Oh, yeah, yep. I knew that, and I planned for it. I lost my child. I was there. And those are hard things for Christians to admit. Those are hard things for us to understand. We don't want to believe that God is involved in the bad stuff. But Job says, should I accept the good from God and not the evil? In other words, is God not sovereign enough to be involved in all things in my life? Yes, he is good, meaning all things, evil and bad, works for good. And in the Hebrew language, in the Hebrew culture, what you think is evil, all it means is destruction. That is, God uses chaos and creation to bring about good. In the beginning, there was darkness, formless and void, and God said, let there be light. The story of humanity begins with chaos. What is God saying? I'm comfortable in the chaos. I know you hate it. I know you can't stand it. I know it makes you nervous, and I know you get anxious, but guess what? You want me around when chaos happens because I'm an experienced, chaotic person. I know how to deal with the crisis. I am a crisis manager. When darkness shows up, I run in. Because David says, even the darkness is light to you, O Lord. Oh! So here it is. They're getting this letter. And why are they getting this letter? Later on in verse 10 and verse 11, you hear Jeremiah saying, don't listen to the false prophets. They're lying. What are those prophets are saying? Those prophets are saying, God does not want you to be in exile. He's going to bring you back out. He's going to take you back out. Don't worry. Don't settle down. Don't get comfortable. This is not going to last too long. Don't worry. All good. If you just pay your tithe and do this and do that and come to church and get that, God will take care of it. And God goes, they're lying. It doesn't happen that easily. I have true purpose behind the pain. Although it is hard to hear and it is very difficult, it has helped me through some of the most painful times in my life to know that even in my moments of pain, God is there. Even though it is not something I'd like to hear, even though it's something I struggle with and I'm trying to deal with, I get comfort in knowing that God is sovereign. I've shared with you before, when I was at a church, within 2 weeks, they decided not to continue with me, and the lady was trying to apologize to me, and I told her, you don't need to apologize because you didn't do this, you didn't hire me, therefore you can't fire me. I depend on God. I have to deal with God. When I get mad, I don't get mad at you, I get mad at God. And when you look at all of the people in the Old Testament, all of those people who struggled, when you look, their relationship with God, when you look at David, David is getting angry with God. Job, who is said to be honest, is getting mad at God. Do you hear what Job is saying? I want you to go read it. It makes for great Sabbath reading. Job is saying, I wish I can face you. Job says, I know you're hiding. I can't see you. Come to me. Let me tell you what I think about you. You did this to me. And this is why I tell Christians all the time, when you're going through stuff, don't make excuses for God. He's big enough to handle your pain. He's big enough to handle your anger. You can tell him, I don't like what you're doing. I hate this, God. And that's the kind of relationship he's looking for. He's looking for your honesty, your intimacy, your openness. He's looking for you to get angry at him. You can't go, I can't stand this. And then you go to God, thank you for a wonderful day. Because guess what? When you call your friends, your true friends, not the folks you hide from, your real friends, you tell them when you're mad, don't you? And even if they might not truly be the reason, sometimes you throw your pain at them. And if God is meant to be your forever friend, he deserves your honesty. Jeremiah says, look, God is saying, verse 4, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Now, here's the thing. I don't have enough time. Okay, let me not try to spend too much time. But the very fact that he says the God of Israel, what he's basically saying is, I haven't forgotten the promise I made to Jacob. By calling himself the God of Israel, what he's saying is, even though you're in this mess, what I've said will not change. Ooh. Basically, a little obstacle in your life doesn't change your destination. I know you didn't get excited, but I got excited for you. I got excited for you. Yeah. I lost my job, but what I've said about you will be true. Yes. I've lost this, but what you've lost is not permanent. The God of Israel says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Verse 5, here's what I need you to do. Here's what I've called you to do. When we're looking at what is my purpose, here's what I've called you to do. Build houses and settle down. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there. Do not decrease. What a crazy command. I've been sent into exile. I know what the Babylonians are trying to do. They're trying to make me assimilate into this culture. So I'm not going to stand for it. I won't get married. I'm just going to sit here and mourn. I'm just going to sit here and struggle. I'm just going to sit here and go, I can't believe this happened to me. Why did this happen to me? God goes, get up, get a life. Get up. It's time to live life to the fullest. Even though you're in the midst of exile, even though you hate what's going on around you, I want you to live life to its fullest. Build homes, settle down, get married, have kids. In other words, I have sent you into exile to show people around you an alternative way of living. By telling them, build houses, get married, what is he saying? I want you to show people what a household of God looks like. I want you to show people what marriage under the kingdom of God looks like. They have a different way of what sex looks like, what money looks like, what power looks like. Don't forget what I've taught you, how I've shared with you, what it means to Sabbath and rest. They have this idea of constant work. Show them what it means to have Sabbath. He's saying the solution is not to withdraw and isolate and be different and be weird. The solution is to be a light in the midst of the darkness by living life. Well, what is my purpose? What job am I supposed to do? What job am I called to do? Guess what? Newsflash, anything. Anything. But live life so differently that you shine God's light in the world. Use your giftedness to make a difference. See, everyone else was telling them, don't settle down, don't buy houses, don't get this stuff. Just, try to survive it. And for years, to be honest with you, growing up as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, for years, that was the mentality I grew up with. I just got to survive it until Jesus comes. Am I the only one? When I was going to high school, I said, I'm not going to graduate. Jesus is going to come back. I remember when I was signing my student loans for school. You see, you guys are so blessed. I was talking to Jacob the other day when we were walking, and Jacob was telling me how much he pays for college. And I said, oh, that's what I pay for 3 months. I remember when I was signing the hundreds of thousands of dollars that it took for me to go to college. As I was signing my student loans, I said, he said, sign here. You promise to pay back? Yes, I will. Jesus is coming. I was like, no worries. Where do you want me to sign? I'll sign. There's no way we're going to make it. Jesus is coming back. That was my mentality. I'm just going to survive this thing. I won't live too long. All I have to do is behave. And when he comes back, I'll go with him. It was escapist mentality. But here Jeremiah is saying, nope, settle down. And then he says have children, which means you're not about to go anywhere anytime fast. Have kids. Live in such a way that you make a difference. Matthew chapter 6, verse 14, Jesus telling the disciples this very thing in other words. You are the light of the world. A town or a city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Verse 15, Matthew 6, verse 15. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. When you go home, maybe next week, I've given you a reading for this week already. Go and read some Jeremiah. But when you go home next week, read Matthew 5-7. In it, basically, Jesus says, here's how I want you to live. He talks about marriage, adultery, friendship, anger, murder. And what he calls murder isn't killing someone with our hands, it's killing someone with our words. Jesus basically talks about the kingdom ethics, and basically in Matthew 5-7, he talks about how do I connect with God. When you pray, don't babble on, don't talk, just talk. Tell God how you're feeling because he already knows what you need. Jesus is basically saying to disciples, here's how I want you to live. It's not big, it's not dramatic. You don't have to have years of theology. Here's the thing, love, love, love. Live out your life in a way that pours out grace in other people. I was talking to Elena yesterday. I was telling Tiffany, we have our ministry leaders meeting this week where we gather all our ministry leaders together as we talk about the vision and next steps. And I was getting some food at Costco, and I put in an order in earlier the week. And I came, I got my order, I was ready, very specific with the order. I asked the person before, hey, is this okay? Can I do this? They said, yeah, put in the order, no worries. I come in to pick up my order. As I thought everything's okay. And the person goes, oh, sorry, mate, we didn't get a chance to do it. And I'm going, I cannot stand this. Lord, keep me. And I was doing really well, and I was being really nice, and I was being really considerate, and I was going, okay, stuff happens, And so I'm trying to figure out, hey, is there a way we can do this? Can I take some of this out here and do this? And they go, well, we can't do that. We can't do that. I say, well, in the States, I'm able to do that. They're like, oh, this is Australia. I'm going, okay, Jesus, help me. Here's the thing, I totally forgot about my purpose. I totally forgot about my purpose. And if you're not getting it, here's your purpose. To live as a light in the world. It isn't that deep. The truth of the matter is, that God has intentionally chosen all different types of people in the Bible to lead out. Shepherds, architects, doctors, historians. He's done it through all of them so that you can know it doesn't matter what career you pick to live out the purpose of God. We've equated purpose with professional career. Your career is not your purpose. God is not in the business of choosing your career. He's in the business of choosing your purpose. And your purpose is to be a light wherever you are. That could be as an engineer. That could be as a doctor. That could be as a teacher. That could be as a student. It doesn't matter what it is. God can use you. You could be the dishwasher. You could be the doorman. There's a reason why. Look, the story that we read last week, Mordecai, he was just the gatekeeper. God doesn't choose careers. Paul was a tent maker. Jesus, when he came, he chose a career. He was a carpenter. He's doing that to show you intentionally. It doesn't matter what you do in the world. It's how you live in the world that matters. How you live matters. Yesterday, I forgot my purpose because the minute I heard this lady come to me, Anna, the minute Anna came to me and said, "Sir, you have to hurry up and make a decision. We're closing." I said, "I cannot stand this country." Everything about this place is, she'll be right. It's okay. Don't worry. Lay back. There's a level of professionalism and customer service that is needed. This is an American company. I ordered this on Tuesday, and I expected. You can't just tell me to walk out of it. I will not walk out without my order. Well, sir, there's nothing we can do for you now. Can I speak to the manager, please? Manager comes over, and I go, "I don't understand this level of incompetence." Yes. I'm telling on myself so you can know I'm broken. Yeah, there are some pastors who would never say stuff like this. And there's some people who probably believe I should never say that from the stage. But here I am. So I can let you know we fall down, but we get back up. I remember as I finished speaking to the manager and we worked something out, he says, "Well, I'll do this for free and this and that." And I remember as I'm walking out, heading to the aisle, I remember that I was wearing a shirt that says, "By his stripes, we are healed." Mercy. Have mercy. Thank God it didn't say Burwood Church. But here's what I realized. I immediately went to the manager. "I am so sorry. I just lost it. I've had this. I've gone from one meeting from this morning. I woke up at 9 a.m. I've been one meeting. I have a newborn. There's no excuse, but there's a lot happening in my life right now, and this was out of character. I am so sorry." He goes, "It's okay, mate. I'll talk to the manager. I get it. But of course, I spent the next 2 and 3 hours going, how horrible was I? Because I missed my purpose. I had a situation in which I was able to give grace, and instead of grace, I brought wrath. And here's what God has called us to do. Listen to this. Look at what God says to Jeremiah. Jeremiah 29, verse 7. "Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile." You're not just meant to live there, you're meant to intentionally seek its peace and its prosperity. You are not called to just live and breathe and just deal with life as it is. Everywhere I go, I'm on purpose. I am on the job. When I'm at Costco, I'm on the job. When I'm doing fuel, I'm on the job at school. I'm on the job at work. I am on the job for God. God, I am meant to seek the peace and prosperity of everywhere I go. I missed my purpose yesterday. But I thank God that his mercy endures forever. I thank God that from now on, I will be the nicest customer at Costco. I thank God that his grace is enough, that there is another chance. Pray to the Lord for it, Jeremiah says. Don't just seek its peace and prosperity. Pray to the Lord for it. Do you understand this idea? The God of Israel, do not let the prophets and diviners among you deceive you. Don't let them think you're going to go, everything's going to be okay, we're just going to escape. Let the city ruin, and in us, let's just escape to the good life. Let's go to heaven and everyone else can perish. That is not the message of God. The message of God is where you are should prosper because of you. Where you are should prosper. Pray for it. We are called to pray for the peace, the holistic peace of our city. Cities, and notice there's a reason why it says prosperity of the city. Cities is where everyone is coming to. Melbourne is meant to outgrow and be the largest city in just a few years. That God is sending people to the city because you're here. He's called you to make a difference. In Acts chapter 17, verse 26, listen to what God says. From one man, he made all nations that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he set apart, he marked out their appointed times in history. Do you understand? Ulrich, do you understand what God is saying? He marked out your appointed time in history. The era in which you live, Michelle, was marked out by God. That's if you believe the Bible. If you believe the Bible, you are set to live in this generation, in this era, for a specific purpose. What is the purpose? He marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. Where you would live was marked out by God. 27. Verse 27, God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. God did it so that we would seek him. The place you're living, the era you live in, is the best opportunity you have to find God. And guess what? I believe that it wasn't just meant for you to find God, but for the people around you to find God through you. That's your purpose. He says, look, verse 10 of Jeremiah 29, this is what the Lord says, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I'll come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. Notice that it doesn't say when 70 years are completed for you. That is, he sent them in exile to Babylon for Babylon. I love it. That's such a good word. He's saying, you think it's punishment and I've sent you on mission. Woo! What a good word. That's a good word. When I looked at it, I had to read it over again. I said, wait a minute. You mean when 7 years are over for Jerusalem? No, for Israel. No. It says for Babylon. I did not send you here out of wrath. You're not in the terrible situation for you. Your story will lighten up someone else's life. You're going through what you're going through so it can be an example for someone else. When you show them what happens, how do you behave when you lose a child, it gives them hope when they lose a child. When you demonstrate how to stay in a marriage when the marriage is tough, it helps someone else know how to stay in a marriage when a marriage is tough. When you show them how to be divorced once the marriage is over, it shows someone else how to be divorced once the marriage is over. When you show them what it means to lose your job and how to behave, it shows someone else how to behave when they've lost their job. Your story is meant for his glory. That's your purpose in the world. It's not a career. It's not a profession. It is to be a light to those around you. That's who we're called to be as a movement-making church, making disciples in the real world. What does it mean to get angry? How do I get back from anger? How do I fall? How do I get back up? It's meant to show people, how do I live in this world? That's the purpose. How do I live? Jesus said in John 20, verse 21, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you. As the Father has sent me. In John 1, verse 14, the Message, Eugene Peterson translate the Greek version in this way. It says, the Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. Jesus came into our neighborhood to show us what it means to be human. He says, just like God sent me, God did not send me to be a carpenter. He sent me to move into your neighborhood. God didn't send you to be a doctor. He didn't send you to be a reporter. He just sent you to move into that job. Your presence there is what God is calling for. And when you're done on mission, I'll take you away. But as the Father has sent me, I am sending you. He moved into our neighborhood, showed us what it's like to be human, lived for us. He said, I did not come to serve myself, I came to serve you. And that is what we're called to do in the real world. That's what it means to be Christian. So some practical steps. Later on, you'll hear in our What's Next portion, you'll hear some practical ways you can get involved. I want to just share with you right now some practical steps. How do I do this? Everywhere you go, don't do like Jose. Pass out generosity because the world doesn't know what grace looks like. Give grace. Practice love. Hand out mercy. One of our life groups this morning, I saw them preparing food for a soup kitchen later today. Go to our What's Next. Find out, how can I get involved in the soup kitchen? There are ways you can get involved and get connected. Our young adults are going on a road trip for good. I think that's really cool. They're just going to take a road trip and buy from stores that were affected by the fire, that are trying to get back on business. They're just going to go and buy stuff. That's called living in the real world, seeing a need and meeting it. That's what we're called to do. We're called to affect change and impact change. We're called to live in such a way that others go, there must be a God in this world. And that's what we're called to do. And so I implore you, don't be like me. Pray for me. Live generously and hand out grace.